Today we are going to watch Emotional John's video. That's actually a guy that I wanted to watch on the live stream for a while because he's doing pretty cool videos, and he ponders the question, what if they don't fix Elden Ring? Let's see what John actually cooked.
With the number of patches remaining ever decreasing, the hype of the DLC waning, and minimal community engagement from the developers, Elden Ring is facing its longest shadow. End of life. Before the big sleep, myself and many other content creators are asking for a number of changes, with most centered around the multiplayer. You may have seen my video asking From Software to patch the Taunter's Tongue, making it act like the dried finger of Dark Souls by expanding the player count. You may have seen my video advocating for a better arena, suggesting level brackets and more robust maps and incentives. With patch 1.13 released earlier this week, I was disappointed but not surprised when no such changes were made.
I have to admit something, I have zero faith in From Software doing any fundamental changes anymore. Although, I also had like complete luck back in the days of the patch 1.01, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then patch 1.06 came and kind of changed everything. Since patch 1.06, they started heavily working on the multiplayer aspect of the Elden Ring, added global invasions, then added separated scaling in the another patch 1.07 for the PvP, then added Coliseums in 1.08, then made like further improvements to the overall balance of the game on 1.09. Then on 1.10 they said fuck it, and they did entire reset to the combat system in PvP altogether. And yeah, honestly, it was interesting run ever since patch 1.06, but ever since release of DLC, my hopes and dreams kind of faded very quickly. But yeah, I digress. Let's continue with the video.
Fortunately, there are still more patches, more opportunities to implement these very, very important changes. And it's those future changes I want to talk about today. What if they don't fix it? What if the remaining patches are nothing more than small adjustments and balancing tweaks? It's certainly possible. In fact, I'd say it's extremely likely. From Software have shown a frustrating indifference to the multiplayer community so far that has caused many—
No, wait. This is actually wrong, and I see also Carlos in chat saying that FromSoft don't care much about PvP. What I just said about like patches from 1.06 to 1.10 shows exactly oppose. From Software cares about PvP, always did. Other updates to the Dark Souls 3, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 1 after the release show like a lot of focus on the PvP. There are like just fundamental issues with From Software and their lack of communication with the community, and then like obvious and baffling things like, for example, them nerfing heavy thrusting sword every single patch, and I am pretty certain they are nerfing heavy thrusting swords because they think it is thrusting sword instead. So there is like some baffling bullshit, because like in the past they, for example, nerfed the crouch attack of the heavy thrusting sword alongside the thrusting sword and basically the same amount of frames. It's like they kind of are clueless. They want to do something, but at the same time they seem to be lacking like fundamental understanding what they have in the game. Like it's almost like they have no one that giving them like correct feedback of, hey, this is this is that, this needs that, and then they receive some feedback from the community without much of understanding what's going on, and then we ending up with ridiculous patches.
Any to abandon the game. Sure, they added separate balancing for PvP and PvE, and they did add the Coliseums for dedicated PvP, but I want to point out something I feel is increasingly obvious about those additions. They were not added for the benefit of PvP players.
What?
They were added for the benefit of everyone else. Now that might sound counterintuitive.
Explain, John.
I finally snapped. Maybe I've suffered a head injury from how far I fell when the DLC answered exactly none of my prayers. But I assure you, I am of sound, if not irritated, mind. My
Okay.
argument is simple. Take a look at what they changed with those updates. Separate PvP and PvE balancing addresses a common complaint in the community, that PvPers want balance changes for overpowered or otherwise unsuitable gear in PvP, gear that PvE players like using. Rather than annoy PvE players who want their powerful toys to remain powerful by rebalancing their favorite easy modes, a more elegant solution is to simply only change the weapons for PvP.
It's very far-fetched argument. This is not true. They are nerfing freaking PvE like tools all the time. Conspiracy theories, basically, yeah. Like, this is just not true. Like, fundamentally, PvP and PvE are like very different, and that's why it's to everyone's benefit that PvE and PvP have separated scalings. It's just a tool that allows for further balancing. In my opinion, like, this is actually just wrong argument. It is like just looking for giving FromSoft the devil's horns as like, oh, bad guy doesn't care about PvP at all, la la la. No, I don't think so. That's the case at all.
This keeps PvEers happy, and the relatively unimportant desires of the comparably small PvP scene are nigh meaningless in the face of the very large, somewhat casual audience that does not partake.
Yeah, but this is like normal, yeah? I think like From Software pretty sure is fully aware that yes, the PvP scene is small, but it's also important. It's the same like in every other game. Like it's always going to be like that. A PvP game that is usually pretty much like kind of solo experience, in the meaning that like when you're invader, you're very often like playing on your own. Like it's not a team game by default. That's what I mean, yeah? This type of games are always relatively small if PvP focused, yeah? If that's going to be like shooters like Quake, if that's going to be fighting games, if you're going to see the actual numbers, how many people actually playing these on, for example, let's say, let's open Steam, yeah, and let's type Tekken, for example, in there. Like Tekken 8 is currently 7.8k players, and that's a relatively new game. 7 months ago, the peak was actually 50k, yeah, like in comparison to that, like experience, kind of, let's call it more casual experiences like this, yeah. Although, like for example, Valheim is demanding game, and just these numbers looking way better, yeah. You got my point, yeah? Just this type of PvP experiences, it's kind of understandable they are not going to bring majority of the audience in, but it is important part of these games nonetheless. That's, I mean, daily content production from the game, which basically is a free marketing. It's very reliant on the PvP.
Of course, the change does have merit for PvPers. Separate balancing for PvP and PvE is a perfectly reasonable idea when they are not built to the same standards. But the fact remains that splitting the balance seems to cater more to the PvE side rather than the PvP side. And for different reasons, the same is true of the Coliseum update. But how could an update exclusively centered around PvP be to the benefit of PvE players? Well, it's a cage. A place for PvPers to go to fight each other and leave everyone else alone. If I had $1 for every comment someone left on one of my videos telling me
I am so confused. Okay,
variation of go to the arena whenever I talk about invasions, I could afford to bribe someone at From Software to make the changes I need.
But, bruh, like, this is... Holy shit, man. I don't even know, like, how to react to this type of take. Like, people gonna tell you this type of shit, like, no matter what. Like, gonna tell you go to the arena. In Dark Souls 3, before the Coliseum was the thing, like, gonna tell you to go to Pontiff. I don't know why. Like, John is trying to portray From Software as the guys that just trying to look like a PvP in the cage. So we are introducing this game mode in every single game of ours that has multiplayer interactions because we secretly hate it. Like, it doesn't fucking make sense whatsoever, my dude. Like, Coliseum, of course, has shit tons of flaws, but what it gave us is essentially a place where people interested in duels can get these duels very, very quickly. It's essentially like, can be considered as, in some places, like worse experience than just sitting at main academy gate and summoning the signs, but at the same time, it is more accessible way for like these, like you call it, like, you know, casual players, PvEers or whatever, to actually have easier interaction with PvP and maybe even stay on the with the PvP for longer. Like, it's honestly, it's Coliseum is for everyone, and that's great because these games are not supposed to be looked at in the first place as something that just separates these quote unquote game modes. Like Elden Ring and other Souls games are essentially like the pack of everything. You can do all these things. You can co-op, you can duel, you can PvP in form of the invasions. You can just leave the messages. Like you can just interact in many different ways with other players. This is just what it is, and that's great that Colosseums exist, in my opinion. And yet again, I think just for everyone.
But seriously, it's a very common complaint. PvE players, specifically cooperators, hate invaders. Not universally, mind you, they are not a monolith, but with remarkable consistency, they hate us. They want some place to draw invaders away so they can just play with their friends. Some place to distract the vile plague that is invasion. We've already seen Elden Ring shy away from invasions as a core mechanic, relegating them to an opt-in feature centered around cooperation.
I am, like, not sure what is the source of this claim.
The fact that it still isn't good enough for many players should speak volumes about the expectations the developers are faced with. There is clear demand to reduce invasions. And the Coliseum is a place for would-be invaders to get matches against other would-be invaders. Of course, invaders understand that the Coliseum is no true replacement, and not all PvP is the same. Invading is a mechanic that embraces what makes Souls multiplayer unique. It throws PvP into the mix against players who would otherwise not engage. It forces something on cooperators in a way no other game does. And it's better for it. Plenty of players do not like invasions, and they're entitled to dislike them. No one likes losing. But invasions have merit because they make the game different. They give it an identity, and one centered around the delicate balance of player agency, no less. So for players who dislike or even outright despise invasions, the idea that invaders should be locked away in an arena where they can fight each other like rabid dogs, however misguided, makes a lot of sense. You want nothing to do with them, so throw them away. And invaders who just want to fight are more than happy to try the Coliseum. They'll go where the action is. But there is no action in the Coliseum. It lacks the nuance and chaos of an invasion. It's a match, not a hunt. So it should be no surprise to anyone who understands that simple division that the Coliseum is for duelists and the overworld is for invaders. But we should remember something I asserted about From Software in a previous video. From Software are not invaders. They do not understand. Now, that assertion is not one I can back up with any direct evidence. It is something I can only feel and believe, given the games they make and how they make them. I am confident Miyazaki does not invade, as he has gone on record stating he plays very little of his games once released, and requires excessive help to complete them.
Well, pretty much as long as I live, and as long as I have touched, let's call it, game dev a little bit. Either in form of doing stuff myself, because when I was a teenager, I was doing private servers for like popular games. Playing on your own things is rather something that you usually simply don't do. And this is absolutely normal that very often devs don't really play the game, or simply don't play the game like a player would. And I essentially relatively recently helped Lords of the Fallen developers to balance the game, little bit too late and stuff, but even today I still am in the contact with them. And yeah, right now the Lords of the Fallen is pretty much done. There is no more patches going, but they actually managed to bring the game to somewhat decent state, even though it was absolute dumpster fire on the release. And for example, with Lords of the Fallen, even though multiplayer part, like the PvP part of the game, was absolutely not ready to be released, they still wanted to release it. They wanted to do it. And there is like very high chance there's someone from software that just really wants to have that PvP. That being said, wanting to have something and designing it in the way so it's actually good, those are two different things, yeah? Since FromSoft seems to have fundamentally huge issues with receiving feedback. Like, this is where the problem is. I think just there is absolute lack of the correct communication with the developers, because like when it comes to Lords of the Fallen, a lot of things that were broken in the game, it was a matter of me sending a message to the devs and the shit was fixed the next day. Of course, like maybe like a way how From Software pushing patches and stuff like is a little bit different, yeah? So maybe it could like be a little bit longer, but I am pretty sure a lot of issues that's related to Elden Ring could be fixed by like one person just doing something, yeah? And the question is like if they know what they're supposed to do, because it's very likely they don't.
Not exactly the makings of a typical invader. And it makes sense. Invading is a lifestyle. It's a brand.
Oh my god.
It's a way of playing the game that makes every other aspect of the game secondary. It changes the way you see the game entirely. So when they try to
I love
make these
this claim.
PvP-focused patches, I see it as an attempt to appease non-PvPers. A shot at giving mainline invaders a designated place to get out of everyone else's way. By providing a dedicated PvP zone, they can separate the player base and protect the anti-invasion crowd. The priority remains with the PvE players because that's who From Software is. Like any good developer, they make games they want to play, and they do not want to PvP. Because if invasions, or PvP in general, were a priority for From Software, it would be apparent. They would make adjustments not only to weapon balance or inconsistencies, they would make serious, palpable changes. Changes like a 6-player limit or a fully functional arena. Changes like covenants and rewards for multiplayer. Changes that experienced, knowledgeable, passionate players have been asking for years.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Like, you know, this is definitely something I would love to have and stuff, yeah? There is a problem, though. There is that interview with Miyazaki from 2022 where he basically explains the idea behind Elden Ring. And the idea is simplification of Soul's formula. And covenants, according to this interview, were basically too complicated in the execution in the eyes of Miyazaki to be in the game. Like Elden Ring, in quotation of his words, is not this type of game, and therefore Covenants had to go. And that's something that just I often see. A good example of this funny thing as if developer ends up in the vicious loop of doing something for the sake of, because it is consistent with the rest of the game. This is Gothic, yeah? And in Gothic, you picking up items by holding left mouse button or control, and then you have to click either arrow upwards or W, instead of just clicking left mouse button or control. So the reason for that is because they wanted to keep stuff organic within the game, as the combat system of the game is related to you holding left mouse button or control, and then like a clicking W or upwards is like launch forward with the attack, then to the left is like attack to the left, and then to the right is attack to the right, like backwards is like a block, and so on. Yeah, so they designed all their systems with idea to make this type of controls just organic and like be the same across many other aspects of the game. So I think like what might be an issue in Elden Ring is basically the same. They just want to keep the game being consistent, and they try to simplify like these systems that like, you know, it's because of that like you probably just don't have these covenants because they believe they could be like too complicated, and like like since there was no covenants in the original game, then we got no covenants in the DLC, and it's probably just unfortunate case of bad approach fundamentally, because no matter what, no matter how casual of a player you would ask, everyone is going to tell you they want covenants. So yeah, it's just a matter of, unfortunately, From Software missing the mark with their like fundamental expectations of what player want from their future game and what would make like the best possible, the best game. I'm not sure about 4 and 6 player limit though. Like I don't exactly understand, and I have no idea what could be the reason behind them like making the system like it is.
Things that would actually encourage people to engage with those systems. But those aren't the changes we've gotten. I'd hesitate to call them changes at all. They're really nothing more than adjustments, and small ones at that. Many members of the community, myself included, staked all hopes on the DLC, a paid expansion that could add anything into the game. Anything that would suddenly change everything about the multiplayer experience and make everyone happy. But the DLC arrived and did not bear the gifts for which we asked. Some new toys, sure, but no new ways to play with them. And as is true of all toys, we will tire of them in short order, because it is the games that make toys fun. So, in light of all this, I want to pose the question to you, dear viewer. You, as someone who has pinned hopes and expectations on a game that has essentially ignored any external advice regarding anything multiplayer. What happens if they don't fix anything? I don't know.
Seamless co-op.
The simplest answer is we wait. We wait for another game that maybe gets it right, or at least improves the approach. It's not glamorous, but it could be all we have. A more complicated answer is community efforts. Seamless Co-op has received high praise for its addition of PvP and expanded player count, so I think there could be something there. Then again, that does nothing to help anyone not on PC, and community efforts like this are rarely substitutes for an official experience.
What do you mean substitute up for the... Oh my god, okay. Maybe like Gamer didn't play Seamless Co-op, but Seamless Co-op already, when it comes to at least activity, is just so much better than the base game. Like, it's pretty much every single patch is a step in the right direction. In like a month or two, I can assure you that Seamless Co-op is going to be absolutely fantastic. Like, I also have access to like type of feedback that Luke Huey receives, and what they think about them, like, and what they want to implement in the future. And yeah, this is like, I can assure you right now, like, Seamless Co-op is kind of janky here and there, but they are doing like tremendous effort in making it as good as is only possible. Even recently, in the recent update, you actually have encouragements for scrubs, PvEers, or just like, you know, co-opers, for the sake of to keep the invasions on, in the form of better drop tables, like, you know, essentially drops from invaders if they are going to kill invaders. And that's cool as hell. Like, the guy is thinking about everyone that's playing seamless co-op and wants to provide multiplayer focused experience in Elden Ring that's just the best possible, and that's going to be essentially, like, ultimately something that's going to save Elden Ring in the long term. That being said, Luke Huey is not the only god gamer in the community that is doing amazing things. I know at least 2 other projects that bank in the production that are actually going to be also multiplayer related and also can have a huge impact on the multi overall. Like, it might be a dwelling scene, it might be like invasions. We're gonna see what these other projects going to bring. But yeah, modders definitely doing tremendous effort for the sake of to make multiplayer just better.
Some players do not want to mod their game or deal with the quirks of unsanctioned play. It's just the reality of the situation. There is, of course, the possibility of other developers stepping up, as many have attempted to do, but until I see a developer who not only understands and properly implements every single aspect of what makes a Souls game great, but can improve on the multiplayer experience in a meaningful way, I remain extremely skeptical. And the hardest answer is, it may not matter what we do. We are unimportant in the grand scheme of the gaming industry. We buy the game and we play it, same as anyone. From Software may not hate us, but they are so far deaf to our cries. But I am not yet ready to admit defeat. I am not willing to give up on the only series that holds my interest. From Software can make the changes needed, and it would be to their benefit. Nothing I have proposed would harm the PvE community in any way, and if anything, would only bolster their experience. A larger player count in the overworld would benefit any player who has 3 friends. A more robust arena would actually have a chance at reducing invasions of casual co-opers, as serious PvPers who are more interested in competitive play would actually have a functional outlet. These are good, reasonable ideas that perfectly mesh with the template of Elden Ring, and to deny their implementation would be an act of sheer indifference. But I believe in From Software, even where we differ. They are a good developer with strong reasoning. If they can give me a good reason to not implement these changes, then I'll resign myself to wishful thinking. But otherwise, if there is no good reason not to, I can accept nothing less than a return to form and an improvement of the wholly unique system they have built over 15 years. So please, From Software, please, Miyazaki, listen to your players. All of your players. We love the game and we want to keep playing. Just give us the tools to make it work.
Okay, I mean, they are listening. Like, they are doing like what they can. Just there is clearly like problem with the interpretation of what they are hearing, though. This is actually how I see it.
That's all for this video. We're only getting so
Alright, come on. Get this host. Here you go. Very nice. Well played, gamer. So I have seen you guys on chat like were sometimes upset about what this guy was saying. I honestly think that like this video was great, even though I disagree with some sentiments in there, and I think like the final message is also very, very good. Even though the guy is kind of blackpilled, it's okay. Yet again, video good. I approve.